Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. During this video, I'll be showing you how you can make your own buttons in Unity. And just to show you the final result of what this video is going to be showing, you can see that I have a button in my scene. If I were to press on it, you can see that it activates the door. In my case, you can obviously do whatever you want, and you can see that the button is actually pressed and unpressed when I release it. So let's get to it, and what we're going to need first is obviously the button, so the actual model. And in my case, I just used a cylinder and kind of just pressed it down on the scale, so you can see that I have an upper button, which is basically the white part above, and the lower part, which is the red one. Neither of these have any functionality. They're just for visual purposes, and the functionality is on the parent object of these two, which is just a button. It doesn't have any visual effects, and it has an animator which is responsible for the actual visual change of pressing and unpressing of the button. There's also the button script, which basically handles the detection of the collision. So when the player actually presses the button, and also there is a collider which is responsible for basically checking if the player is on it or not. And I'm using a slightly different method than what you would expect. Instead of having an actual collider, I have an is trigger collider and have the collider, as you can see, above the button and checking if the player is above it. And this solves some issues with using the actual collision, so in between these two, because when the button is going downwards, the player will be losing contact with the button as it's going downwards, and it will be basically a millisecond of losing contact, and then the gravity will be pushing the player down and then getting the contact again. So it gets a bit complicated, so I'm not going to go down that road, but that is why I've used this method instead of using the actual collider. So let's get to the animator. So I've made it a single animation for both upward and downward momentum. So you can see that the animation is just two keyframes. See that it's actually just going downwards, and I'll be showing you a very easy trick to use for your animation, so you don't have to make multiple animations. And before I do that, if you're not sure how to use keyframes, you just press the red button here, go to the time that you want the change to be happening. In my case, I want to be at the 0, modify the Y to be at whatever point you want for, let's say, the upper one, and set it to here, and then change it to half a second or a second, and push it downwards to wherever you want your button to be, and then just unpress it, and it will create a keyframe, and Unity will create the animation for you. Then you're going to need an animator, and all you need to do is go to the button, so the parent button, create the animator, and create a controller by going create, uh, and find the animator controller, which is here. So you can see animator controller. I already have mine. So you just need to drop this controller onto your animator right here. Then open up the animator panel, which is going to window, find the animation, and open up the animator. It looks kind of like this, and you'll have an entry and won't have these three states right here. So these two states are actually the same animation that we have created. So you need to drop the animation that you created twice, and if you can remember, we created a single animation that will be going down, so it will be the animation that goes when the button is pressed, and that will be the animation. But we need an animation for the button to be going up as well. And the simple trick that I use when I have animations that look very similar, or basically the opposite of basic opening, closing, and they basically look the same. So instead of creating two animations, I have one animation set the speed to -1. So this will be the opposite of what the initial animation was doing. So in this case, it was going downwards. The opposite of this will be going upwards. So this saves me having to create an additional animation. And we also need a parameter, which is going to be a boolean. You can create it by going onto the plus sign and clicking boolean. And this will be a parameter that will be checked by the transitions here. If you're not sure what these are, you can have a look at the documentation of Unity, but basically it gives you an additional way of checking before actually transitioning to that animation. And basically we are starting off from the entry, and we have this starting layer which has no animation on it, and basically you need to go create layer and empty, and just set as a transition, as you can see, to the button down. And in case the pressed parameter we created is true, it will transition from the starting state to the button state, button down state. And then once it completes the animation, it will stay onto this until the button is actually unpressed. So the parameter we have created will turn to false, and in that case, it will go to the button up, and vice versa. When it's added button up, it will stay right there until the button is again pressed, and it will go back down to the button down. So it will be looping between these two based on our parameter, and this is actually done through a script. So let's have a look at that. So going on to the button script, we have first three variables. One is the press state, which is going to be controlling the parameter that we've created onto the animator. Then we have the actual animator that we're going to be getting in the start function. And I have the door script. And this is actually, or just in my case, my functionality for the button is to open and close a door. You can do whatever you want. You need to copy this. Um, and again, this is for finding the component of the door script. You don't need to follow this either. So we have three functions here. The two are the on trigger enter and on trigger exit, and we have also the toggle press state. This is called based on the on trigger enter and on trigger exit. So whenever the player enters the collider that I've mentioned before, we are going to be first checking if it's the actual player. We don't want this to be actually triggering for all objects unless you actually want that. So for example, if you have a functionality that allows other objects to press the button, you can ignore this line. And whenever it enters, you are going to be calling this entangling the state of the button. And this will be turning the press state to the opposite of what it is right now. So if it's false, it will turn to true. And if it's true, it will turn to false. Then set the boolean that we created before, so changing by its name and then passing in the press state, and this will change the pressed parameter that we've created in the animator to whatever the press state is in our script. Then I'm calling the door script again. This is not you don't need to copy this. This will be the functionality of your button. And okay, so we're calling this on both occasions whenever we are exiting the collider, whenever we're entering and whenever we are exiting. So it's the same code as you can see, and just calls this. And simple as that, we have a button that is working and is very easily implemented. So just to show you one more time how this looks like, if I were to run this, you can see that the button is waiting for me to press it. I'm jumping on it. You can see that it opens the door, and when I'm leaving, it closes the door, and vice versa, it carries on. And okay, so that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you found it useful, comment below. If you have any questions and if you have any recommendations for a video, again, comment below. Thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.